the AI6 podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
Louise McCormack, so great to have you on the AI6 podcast. I was there in the theatre in Galway for your TEDx talk a number of months ago. So first of all, introduce yourself to our audience and how you got into AI, and then we'll go on and talk about the TEDx talk.
Yes, so I worked in marketing and digital transformation projects for about 10 years across a number of sectors. I worked in insurance, media, hotel industry, all kind of sectors, mostly in around. I started out in customer acquisition and digital marketing, and then I moved into optimization. I was first involved in, I guess I was involved in AI since algorithms for marketing, but the first time I really got involved in it was I brought in chatbots into an insurance company in 2018-19 to optimize sales and customer service. And that was my first kind of touch into AI. And I ended up going on into customer lifecycle management, different roles like that, acquisition manager in Media House. I was the optimization manager for a different global company. And then I decided I wanted to do something different. So quite a big career change. I went from reporting into that function to now I'm reporting into like the legal function. So huge change for me. And that all started with doing my PhD in the University of Galway in Trustworthy AI evaluation.
So as a digital marketer, you saw firsthand the benefits of AI, but a massive sidestep, as you say. And for you now, it's about ethical AI. And why is that important to you?
I think you reach a point in your life where I think, at least myself and a lot of my friends have reached a point in our life where we're like, we want our jobs to mean a little bit more than making money for a company. And that's really the nuts and bolts of it. You just reach a point where you're like, do I really get out of bed every day to help companies make more money? And even if they're nice companies, just it's not enough. It's not enough to want to motivate yourself. And I'm a kind of person that need to really be into what I'm doing. So I was quite good at my job. So I was always into my job. But yeah, you get to a point where you're like, it needs to mean more than just helping somebody make more money.
And now in 2025, AI has become mainstream and organizations across the board are beginning to adopt it. But governance and oversight is a huge pillar of AI implementation. So your experience and now your research and your application in the real world is very, very important. Let's get into your TEDx talk and ethical and trustworthy AI. Is it possible, first of all, to have ethical and trustworthy AI?
I think it's possible to do a good job of it. I mean, is it possible to live in a perfect world? I don't know exactly, but there's definitely a lot of very tangible things we can do. And I think a good starting point for that is the AI Act. People talk about regulation for AI and it's going to hinder innovation, but it's a really nice framework. There's a really good ethical framework there for anybody who wants to start designing technology for like a better future. It's just right there. So I think we actually have a huge opportunity in Europe to innovate products that are ethical and that are good for society. So yeah, I think in Europe anyways, I think we're on the right track. I think it's a really good starting point. And I think there's a really big opportunity to innovate in a way that's going to align with the legislation, in a way that's going to align with probably a lot of people's personal values, and in a way that's going to be good for society. So yeah, maybe we're not going to, be the first. It depends on how you're measuring, I guess, the success of AI. I think in Europe, if our measuring stick is, are we making the most money for billionaires? Maybe we're not going to be that. Maybe we're not going to be the top measuring part of the world for that. But if we're measuring success by, are we building technology that's actually helping people and our society is turned in a good direction and we're using this technology well to benefit society and create good jobs for people, I think we could be the first to do a good job of that if we're following these kind of ethical frameworks that are laid out for us in the regulation.
Well, your point is very well made. And in fact, only this week we heard from the US Vice President J.D. Vance at the AI Festival in Paris, where world and tech leaders were there. And he was bemoaning the fact that the EU is approach to AI is heavily regulated. And then we had the US President Donald Trump, again, heavily critical of the EU Digital Services Act because they've penalized US social networks and tech companies for data breaches. So you can see at what side of the fence the EU has its leg. And I guess I'm on your side around ethics and transparency. I hope we're not put under so much pressure that we shift our focus. But give me some examples of where there is maybe inherent risk. And you talked about bias a lot in your TEDx talk within AI. Just explain that to people.
So in society, we have bias when you go and apply for, historically, if you go and apply for a mortgage for your house to your local bank manager, there's bias that exists there. You might be judged a little bit harsher based on what family you come from. You might be given a little bit more slack, maybe based on which family you come from. A number of years ago, the decision about whether or not you get a mortgage was outsourced. It's no longer made in your local town bank in Ireland. It's made in a centralized location, and it's going into an algorithm. And that algorithm is designed to try and be as fair as possible. It's designed to try and make as much money for the bank and lower the risk as possible. But they do want it to not be biased. And unfortunately, when we train these algorithms, we trained it on the data that was made by the local bank manager. And so these systems are biased, and we could test them. We could test them and say, here's a characteristic, like, for example, gender. To what degree did you consider gender? And on the surface, the algorithm will say, like, you can see it was never told the gender. So how could it have, inferred the gender? But it will have. And you can actually give it the gender and say, to what degree did you consider gender? And it will tell you. And then you could train that bias out of it. But we don't really bother to do that right now because it affects the accuracy, and it would just take a little bit of work to try and minimize the impact on the accuracy. But you can absolutely do that. It's all technically possible. But we just don't. Companies just don't, because they're not really being regulated to do that. The regulators usually just come in and have a look and see, did you give the model the gender? You didn't. That's enough. And so the AI Act, of course, makes it illegal, but it's already illegal. It's already illegal to discriminate on that. So it just makes it a little bit more black and white. And I think it's going to force regulators to actually go and get the technology they need to do the audits properly, in a more quantifiable way.
And I read a report recently where AI literacy is greater among men than women, and that gap is widened in particular countries and geographics of the world. Now, that's an obvious challenge that we have. So who is inputting that data and training the models? Is it 50-50 men, women, like population breakdown? And also what inherent human biases do they have based on their background, societal views, etc.?
Yeah.
Are companies testing bias as a fundamental or not?
It depends on the sector and the use case, but historically it wouldn't be the top of any company's list. It depends on the use case. It depends on the use case. They're showing that they're not doing anything like at a very obvious level to break the rules, but the models are inferring a lot of things and being biased. Here's an example. Copilot has been rolled out to so many people in their jobs, but Copilot works differently for different people. They say on average it improves your performance by 30% as an employee. That's just a figure that they've kind of started going out. But some employees might actually get a 70% improvement based on how that model works for them, the job function, their ability to use it, the inherent way it's trained. The way you speak to a model, not just because you've learned how to do it, but just the way you speak. The models are trained on particular types of people, and they just work better for a certain type of person, including demographics that are like protected groups. So you're rolling out all this software to your entire staff. It can improve your efficiencies by 5%, or it could improve your efficiency by 70%. So as an employer, you're giving everybody a tool, but it works better for certain demographics than others. So all of a sudden, some people's careers are going to go straight up and some people's careers are not. So you're giving them this tool, all your employees. It does not work equally for all employees. Are they testing that? No, that is not being tested. Some companies, but no. It's very simple to test it. You can have a performance metric assigned to the model. So there are companies that do this, and of course they're getting some customers, but not enough. So there are companies that do this. They will basically sit on top of Copilot. They'll give it a performance metric, saying maybe several metrics to say how well it's working. And you as an employer can go and overlay that in their tool with your protected demographics, and you can identify, okay, actually, our older staff, it's not working for it, or men are talking to it in a way that's not getting the same optimal performance. We need to teach people how to use this. So it's very easy to test and see, are the tools you're rolling out working for everybody, and is it fair, and are we doing a good job for our employees? But no, it's not being done. It's being rolled out quickly. It's being rolled out in a hurry. It's been rolled out to maximize profits. It's been rolled out to protect intellectual property, so that people aren't just horsing their proprietary data into a free version of ChatGPT. And I understand that, but if you're rolling out a tool that's got the potential to change somebody's career by 70% and somebody else's by 5%, you need to be doing your due diligence and in fairness to your employees, and making sure everybody knows how to use it, and that and not just that they know how to use it, that it's performing equally for them, because it simply doesn't perform the same for different people based on how they speak to it.
I've never, ever considered that point. I've always considered how AI might displace jobs, but I've never considered how its introduction equally across an organization then creates gaps and potentially unfair advantage. That is absolutely.
If I'm an employee in a company and I'm getting this tool and I'm not, and one, I'm not getting the training to use it. Two, the tool inherently doesn't work as well for me as it does for my other counterparts because of the way I speak as a woman, say, for example. I'm going to be very annoyed that a tool was rolled out that actually works better for other people than me, and that my ability to do my job and excel in my career is affected by that. Fine for me, this is what I'm studying, so I can use it. But what about thousands of other employees who are just being told, hey, go use Copilot, and watch it 3 years when that tool is not working as well for them, and watch as their careers stagnate while other employees' careers and productivity jumps by 70%. It's completely unfair, and it's completely irresponsible that employers aren't putting monitoring tools on this software. It's completely irresponsible that Copilot doesn't have these things built into it.
Now, we've recently had a new minister with responsibility for AI, and she was asked by a journalist, it's Deputy Neve Smith, so, what's your experience with AI? And she admitted she hadn't even, trialed or used ChatGPT. So she's got a steep learning curve, and that's absolutely fine. I mean, she didn't know she was going to get the job until she got the job. But it made me really curious. I began to research what other countries had ministers for AI. And of course, their job will be enforcement of relevant AI acts around the world, in our case, the AI EU Act. So what do you think Neve Smith's job should cover? She's brand new, but what would you say to her if you had a chance to sit down with her?
I don't know the scope of her job. Personally, of course, my concern is always the safety and I'm a person who in my life, I'm like, let's do it. Let's just try the thing. Let's jump off a cliff, and maybe there's going to be rocks down there. Maybe there's not. Like, I'm a risk taker. But having gotten into this space and having learned about it, I am of the firm belief that we need to slow down and be more conscientious about what we're doing. That would be my advice. And to go back to what I was talking about, measuring success of AI, I would not be measuring the success of AI by how, much money someone in the stock market's making. How many of us have, most of our finances tied up in the stock market? Yes, I know it affects our economy in a significant way, but our lives are more than money. Our society is more than money. And we really have to have other key performance indicators for the success of AI in Europe. And I would say, go and find out what those are. The first thing I would do personally from a political, economic level, the very first thing I would do is I would look to start a categorization system for AI systems. So in Europe, we have NACE codes. Every economic activity we do can be quantified, and everything that we tax and everything that we're doing can be quantified at a specific economic activity level. Like there's a NACE code for a fisherman. There's who's doing fly fishing. There's a NACE code for that. So we're tracking all these things, but within AI systems, what does an AI even mean? Like it means everything and nothing. It's just an advanced computer. So when we're talking about AI at policy level, we're talking about 1,000 different things. So the first thing I would look to do is to get a categorization system for AI systems. And then you can treat them differently. Some AI systems do deserve to have less red tape. Some AI systems do deserve to have different tax brackets. In the AI Act, there is a categorization system, and the categorization system is based on the risk to health, safety, and fundamental rights. So there's high risk, activities, there's prohibited activities, and they're the main two that's regulated in there. Prohibited ones now, the last 10 days since the 2nd of February, they're prohibited. So there is a categorization for those things. There is a categorization for high risk, but there isn't a categorization for the fundamental utility of the technology. So say, for example, we look at healthcare and how AI is being developed in healthcare. All of the technology that we're developing is being funded by the pharmaceutical industry. And so the pharmaceutical industry has their own priorities around what kind of future AI healthcare we should have. And that is profit-led. They fundamentally, they like to treat illnesses, so they're and also things that are more profitable. So the future of AI in healthcare is being dictated by a for-profit sector, the pharmaceutical industry. So we look at this technology, we could build anything. We could build AI to do anything. But our healthcare system is at the mercy of the money that's behind it for investing in AI, and that's the pharmaceutical industry. So that's not right. If we could go into the pharmaceutical industry and we could start to categorize the AI technology and incentivize them differently, we could help shape what technology gets built in that sector and every sector. There are certain technologies we want in society more than others. And our needs as a society and at government level is different than the needs of the private industries. But the private industries are the ones who get to fully decide it now. Until we categorize what it is that they're doing and start to treat those differently and incentivize those differently, we're just going to let for-profit companies dictate what we get to build in our society. It's not even consumers. It's just fully for-profit companies getting to shape the technology that shapes our whole world. And I think that's a huge problem. And that would be the first thing that I would say to her. It's a long answer to your question. That would be the first thing I would say to her. Get oversight of what it is, the technology, because we're treating it like this one singular thing, and it's just not.
And taking your point a step further, that the AI is being driven by the people and the companies that have the money. But what if governments took control in the public interest? And Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister in the UK, announced in the last month that he wants to create the UK's own equivalent of open AI that is built for what the people and the society of the UK needs. So should governments be pouring taxpayers' euros into AI for the betterment of the people, or should they continue to outsource it? What would be your view there?
It's very interesting when you think about the AI. So say you're with the large language model, ChatGPT. I think that that's something that we can build at a more open source level. I think we should be using more open source, transparent models. And I think what's kind of exciting is that people see us as in this race with the private companies, but I'm not saying that their technology is plateaued, but the models are trained on all the data of the internet, all of this structured data, and they're kind of running out of that data. Now they can start feeding into its synthetic data or other private data, and they can do that. But the big jump that we had was that first big training on kind of all the data that was stolen off the internet. And that was all, that's done now. Private companies have that. There is very much a case where we can catch up with that. Do we want to own our large language model? I don't know. Maybe I don't see a problem with that. It's more about what we do next. So what we're building on top of that. If you can think of those models as little brains. So brains is a bad word. It humanizes it too much. But think about it, those are little central processors. They do, they can perform things. What we're doing now is we're building on top of that. So ChatGPT is out there, Llama, Gemini, these things are out there, and they're like individual models. And each of them can be trained to do a specific task. And what we're doing now is we're all building things on top of those. So those are there. That's fine. And the governments can build their own. They can build their own. Those models are, honestly, they're catching up with each other. And not to say they've plateaued, but they've reached a point where that base processing power is very similar between the different companies. So whether we have our own or use theirs, that's kind of what the level they're at. What we're all doing right now is we're building things on top of that. We're getting multiple versions of them together, and we're linking them. They're calling them, agents or whatever you want to call them. They're linking them together to perform more complex tasks. And that's what we're doing now. And that technology that we're building, that's where my focus is on, not so much what we're using in the bottom, whichever, battery we want to use to power it or processor we want to use to power it. It's more about what are we actually building on top of it? What are we going to use this technology for? And that's where I'm really, really interested in. And I think that will not come from the government because I just don't think that they're in a position to innovate all of the different exciting technologies that can be built on top of it. But I do think they're in a position to label them and incentivize them differently. We have a lot of money, 200 billion in Europe now for AI. And they haven't put the structure in place to figure out who gets that, or even, what categories or what, different things. So I would be very excited to see them start to class what kind of utilities that money's going into, which types of technology, and also which function and industry it's going into. Would be very exciting to see. Because what we have historically is we have technology being built for private companies, and then you have some nicer kind of, maybe another person come along and take that and adapt technology from one utility to another utility. Like in war, we got lots of technologies from war, like duct tape, and then people found, we can use that for other things. And that's what people are doing. People are building this technology for commercial purposes, and then some other person gets to adapt it for a positive use case for the rest of society. But I'm really sick of that. I'm really sick of us having to adapt technologies from commercial companies. I would like to see funding going to somebody to actually innovate the product, and not just have to take the leftovers of whatever commercial entities are developing and try and apply them for some sort of social good. I would like to see people be allowed to develop technology which is designed for social good first. And all we're ever really getting is the scraps of what comes from the technology companies. And I think that's something that has to change.
So final question. By 2030, 5 years on, where will we be? What are your predictions? We've seen the rapid evolution in the short few years. Where do you think we'll be in 5 more?
Well, I think that what's happening right now is just the development of these agents. So we'll be applying them to wherever the biggest cost saving is. I think there's going to be a lot of job displacement, which I think is totally fine. I think we'll see quite positive benefits. There'll be a big shift from the jobs we do now. But I think here in Ireland, yes, there will be changes in jobs functions, but there'll be more elevated jobs. I think the place where I'm most worried about is developing countries. Already we see sweatshops of programmers that are doing the back end work of AI systems, and that's set to continue and increase. I think there's going to be a big problem for the environment. The environmental cost of what we're doing is not at the forefront of anybody's mind. It's when I look up something on my phone or I generate a meme on ChatGPT, and when I do that, I don't feel my phone heating up in my hand, or I don't hear a fan spinning. But somewhere in a different part of the world, there's a fan spinning and something's heating up on my behalf to make that. And I think that that will be a conversation that we will start to have. It's something we should be starting to have right now, but because we could design things to be more optimized, to have less cost on the processing power. But that's we're probably going to put that on a long finger, and I think we'll see that conversation come up in a big way in the future as well. Yeah, I think those are the things I worry about, is the effects on the workforce in developing countries. The workforce here, of course, there's going to be displacement, and that will need support. The developing countries particularly worry about, and then the environmental cost of what we're doing is savage. And I think we're gonna have that conversation when we have that conversation.
Louise McCormack, a fantastic and fascinating conversation. We could go on and continue it, but for now, thank you so much for joining me on AI6. And people should definitely check out your TEDx talk. Is it as simple as just going to YouTube and searching Louise McCormack TEDx Galway, or indeed TikTok?
Yeah, you'll find it on. Yeah, you can head to YouTube and you can look it up. And then if there's any academics, I also have some papers published in the space of trustworthy AI evaluation, which you can get on Google Scholar.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much, and continue your great work.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
The AI6 Podcast with Joanne Sweeney.